Welcome to While We Weren't Recording. Today we're doing Alex fill in the blank.
Fullmetal Alchemist, did you not do the homework?
I did it a while
Did you
ago.
confirm that we were doing the homework? No.
I did. I
No.
said optimistically, and you should have taken that as yes.
I took it exactly how it meant to be taken.
There was no skin off my bag. I've done the homework already.
I was going to say, I watched it once. I'm good.
I mean, we did homework, yes, but what about second homework? So, because we kind of been at
Exactly.
this a while.
I watched that more recently than I watched Full Metal Alchemist.
Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me.
Well, it's on a lot. Why not?
You know, when you flip and you see it there, you're gonna stay.
I every time. I don't care what I'm doing or what point it is. If I see Fellowship on the TV, I'm just that's what I'm watching for the next however many hours.
I
If you
what
had all three of the
concerns me-
movies on at the same time, which one would you choose?
Oh, geez. Why? Why can't we just be chill today?
I would watch them all in a row, but if I had, Fellowship is probably still my favorite overall. It's not like the others aren't 1A and 1B, but
Right. You know, you have 3 kids. You love them all, right? But I
Who's
know
your
what you mean.
favorite?
Right.
your firstborn. The firstborn is your favorite.
Honey, I don't have favorites. It's you, and by a lot. You know, but yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody would be surprised by my answer, actually. So,
I mean, I was like, I'm not going to complain if Two Towers is on. I get to see Helm's Deep. I'm not going to complain if Return of the King is on. I get to see Pelennor Fields. Among other things. But it's not. I'm not going to cry if those are on.
right.
That's why I say I'd rather have the 11 hours.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, since you're in the 90s still, you're probably flipping around, come in halfway through Fellowship, so it's more like 10 and a half hours. But
inevitably, I'm always coming in like Council of Elrond. It's just, it seems to be where every time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was the most horrific part of this conversation to me is the whole, like, I was just flipping through TV. I'm sorry, what year is it? You did a what now? Like, we went to we went to a like bar restaurant last night, and they had like 6 TVs on, and one of them had anime on, and the kids were like, "What commercials? Skip the commercials!" I was like, "I got to tell you guys something. This is how TV used to work." You know?
I saw a comic the other day where it was like, "I'm bored," the kid, and then the parents like, "You go watch something. There's only like 4 things to choose from," and then she just looks at him like deadpan. 4 streaming services. You have no idea how good you have it.
Right. Yeah.
Imagine
4
watching
things.
dubbed anime on Cartoon Network. Ugh.
Yeah.
Dubbed.
That's what life used to be.
That's mostly where it is still. But yeah, we were telling them the whole thing. It was like when you were watching a show, you could only watch that one episode, and if you missed it, there were not reruns. And when you tuned in next week, it was a different episode. You know, and that's week by week. There's no like, oh, I've watched 600 episodes of One Piece in the last like 2 or 3 months. That's my oldest story right now. He's caught up with One Piece, except for there's like one extra season. Yeah, like the anime or whatever. It's
I was going to say he's probably not reading the manga.
No, I mean obviously, but yeah, he's this close to being a weeb because he argues about like the origins of the characters and this anime inspired that anime, and I was like, who are you? You're 9. Like, where did you get this info dumped from?
Another year or 2, and you can properly give him a title of weeb. It's on the way.
Oh, sure.
Congratulations.
Yeah, give it to him now. If this was Justin at 9 just for Marvel and DC as a nerd, then it's 6 of one,
Star
half a
Wars.
dozen of the other.
Has he watched the
Solo
Leveling? If not, you need to sit down and watch Solo Leveling. Maybe it's too violent. Nah, surely it's fine.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, when we were doing Full Metal Alchemist, when I was rewatching it, whatever, he's like, "Oh, what's this?" And I'm like, "Get out of here," And yeah, like, I mean, 90% of Full Metal Alchemist is fine, right? It's the same kind of thing. Like, and I even told this to the wife. It's like The Expanse, right? There are ultra violent moments. Those are punctuation. That doesn't define the show necessarily, right? The show is gritty, whatever. There are ultra violent moments, especially the end is pretty violent, right? Comparatively. I don't know how it
Sure.
compares to One Piece. He's like, oh, I see stuff like that in One Piece, and I pulled up like a picture of Mom after the Taboo transformation to show my wife, and I was like, this happens in like the second episode. He's
First.
not watching the show.
Oh, yeah,
Is
I
it the
guess
first
second.
one? Yeah, like whatever. It happens in the first couple of episodes, let alone we haven't even gotten to Nina yet, and that's episode 4. So, anyway.
I mean, you need to have someone actually like weigh out to you of like someone who's actually watched all 1,000 episodes of One Piece of like, how dark does it get? I know it gets kind of dark. There's little bits that I've seen that's like quite dark. So
we
someone
just
needs
got to
to weigh
watch
that
it, guys. We just got to watch it, right?
Yeah, right.
That'll take us.
I'll get on those.
I was going to say, you don't just start One Piece. Like, you either have been on the periphery and you're going to commit to it, or you just never will.
Well, if you get One Piece and then you get like 600 One Pieces, at what point does it become a horde? That's what I want to know.
Well, they're not even close to the One Piece yet.
Okay. Guys. Oh man. Okay. My moment has come.
No.
My moment has come. I know this topic. I've seen both.
I
know both. I'll say
Okay.
One Piece has more humor in it. That's better.
Okay.
But
then Full Metal Alchemist.
It's more slapstick.
Sure.
Yeah, it's more slapstick. I'd say the brutality of it. There's a couple moments here and there that will it'll show blood or something, but it's not like Twisted Edward kind of stuff, right?
Right.
That's what defines the extremities, right? It's not everyone in the nation dies.
Sure.
Horrific deaths.
There are
That's
still
not One Piece.
Deaths of the little bits that I have seen or read. Like there was an arc of like examining how this person's mother had been killed, and it was quite tragic. It's just not quite so graphic.
Well, there's tragic backstories all the time, but it's all conceptual, right? It's not like twisted half human, half animal monster abominations beyond all understanding. That's really what Full Metal Alchemist is doing, and One Piece does not get.
Yeah,
that
I wouldn't say Full Metal Alchemist was.
I
doing
would say
that. It's just, but it's a prevalent part of the story to know about the hybrids, and that sort of thing, Because I mean the homunculi and the dwarf and the flask, like that. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like when I talk to people about the Cthulhu mythos, for example, and they're like, "Oh, Cthulhu's not very scary," and I was like, "Yeah, if you're not terrified, you don't understand it enough." And I feel like you could say the same thing about Full Metal Alchemist, right? You could be like, "Oh, well, the Legion, those are just the Undying Legion, those are just zombies." They're like, yes, unkillable zombies that are powered by dark necromancy, and like you could get into it. Whereas, like, I'm going to give you some nightmares.
Consuming human souls, right? That's a different kind of...
and so
you don't do a lot of human sacrifice. You have like brutal slavery, right, and trying to own people. But as soon as that's revealed, the guy who does it gets his shit knocked out of him, like hardcore. So it's not even close. I'd say it's not even close to the same level. And I like One Piece better, but I don't think it's anywhere near that level of brutality.
I'm going to take this as the segue that you've just delivered on a plate to me. And one of the officers that is talking to Izumi and Olivia in the beginning of episode 57, which is called Eternal Leave. But it's it's the guy who's like kind of cowardly, hiding up in the background, and then he starts spilling all of the details of like, oh, it was this good gentleman, and he was gonna protect us all and give us immortality, and basically trying to give the same offer to Izumi and Olivia, and Izumi takes her sandal and slaps him across the face with it.
I think she slapped him open-handed the first time, but the second time, like, he started running his mouth, and then she clobbered him, and
with a sandal. It felt very important.
Yes.
No, very kung fu hustle.
Extra insult. So
there's some discussions of like all of the soldiers that were being used for doing this plan of sacrificing the entire country and themselves, and they didn't know. And now that they know, what are you supposed to do with it? And they're like, well, I'm supposed to follow orders. And both Izumi and Olivia, it's just like, you need to protect yourselves and do what you're going to feel comfortable with on the weight of your own soul.
Mm-hmm.
And then they, of course, go investigating and trying to fight all the monsters to do the right things.
Which, just to interject for a second, like that's a pretty I don't know if I'd say prominent, but reoccurring theme. You know, it's like even the alchemists, they're called the dogs of the military, right? And there's all this whole like, you know, the military is going this one way, and obviously it's been corrupted and co-opted by the bad guys as well, right? But they, you know, it becomes almost like an anti kind of military, you know, type of storyline, whatever. And then you have the heroes be like, you know, other than General Olivier, who is also a soldier, right? You know, you've got your couple of Aragons.
I'd say it's pretty. I'd say it's pretty firmly anti-war, and I think this is my big idea with the show is that I think it really is anti-war to the extent that even the main magic system is supposed to be considered bad, right? Which I realize is not exactly what people like to consider with this, but I think that's really where the mangaka is going with this. I think that's what the show's about, because that's the right answer is to give up your gate of truth.
We'll get there,
right?
Yeah.
That's. Oh, okay. Okay,
we're
going to get there, we're going to get there, but
not today.
I think.
Oh, we are.
Okay. Okay.
We're going to go long. Strap in.
Today, right?
Right. So,
yeah.
Ed and Scar and Mustang and Hawkeye are all fighting against the doctor who we can recognize he is the one who had made Bradley as being King Bradley, and he
announces it. So Gold
he's
tooth.
quite happy to see Mustang. He's like, "Oh, you're going to make this easy on me," and then he has all of these other peoples with numbers on them, or I started calling in my notes as rejects, the people who did not become Bradley.
The weebs.
Rude, but not incorrect.
I did not know of a better thing in my little shorthand. So then he starts like drawing with chalk on the ground, and everybody else is fighting, and so they don't interrupt him, and they don't like see like
right.
Don't let the creepy guy do the thing.
If the wizard is in the back doing incantations, you fucking stop him with a purpose. Yes. Like you don't let him finish.
That's the reason he has bodyguards.
Yeah. We get to see Fu, the old man with Ling from Jing. He's fighting the Führer, who he's very happy to go at the guy who destroyed his granddaughter's arm. He's trying to get vengeance, and he's fighting like with the Greed Ling combination people. It's going really well, but then Bradley is able to get Fu's sword, and he makes his comment of like, "I'm more comfortable with this thing," because also he's just really, really good at fighting, and so he's very capable of just winning this thing. And Fu was about to be killed when Ling had like snatched him away to safety and was trying to say, "You shouldn't die or protect yourself." He doesn't want to lose more people. But Fu knows he's already been injured. He's going to die regardless. So he kind of clobbers Ling, jumps away a little bit and says, "Greed, protect the prince," and then runs towards Bradley with a bunch, like 4 different bombs lit on and about to detonate. And this is going to be great, except Bradley as Wrathkin just going to slice those things, and he killed the detonators, and so it doesn't go off, and so it's going to fail. But Buccaneer from Briggs makes use of it and impales Fu with his giant sword, and also doing so impales Bradley because he cannot see what is behind Fu. No matter how good his sight is, he can't see through something, and so that makes Fu's death worthwhile. It was a mortal wound, and they get to win. And that, at least Old Man Fu, he gets to win in this thing. He got what he wanted. Ed and company are fighting. Izumi is kind of explaining the door of truth and the whole taboo thing to the Armstrongs. And Alex Armstrong mentions the sacrifices, which is the word that they use in Japanese. It's it basically transfers as person pillar. And so calling them sacrifices does make sense in English, but it also it's not quite exactly what they're going for, as we'll see. But it's
also a little bit of a card tip, but and ultimately, when they're used, they're not sacrificed. They're not used up, right? So yeah.
That's why it's an interesting difference that doesn't quite get captured in a translation. But the reoccurring theme of this conversation, a few others, is what is the drive that somebody has to commit this greatest taboo to see someone again, to try to resurrect someone. And there's the question to Olivier of would she pay anything to see somebody again? And she's thinking of Buccaneer, and she's like, she is informed like at that moment that he's died.
Yeah, I didn't realize the connection with her and Buccaneer was that strong. So yeah.
But they do their duty, and as it's a little bit later actually that he dies. Put some things mismatched in terms of when the conversations happen.
Sure.
But Buccaneer had asked as his dying wish to Greedling of like, can you defend this gate until our queen says to stand down? He cannot do it now that he's dying, and so it must be the homunculus. And it's just neither Olivia or Buccaneer would acknowledge it in each other, but they are acknowledging it to the other. The creepy doctor wizard person calls back 5 of those rejects and starts doing a transmutation, and they are the 5 of them are disintegrated, and then there are eyes that open beneath Ed and Al and Izumi, and they're just kind of transported away. So the dwarf and the Fast Father already has Hohenheim, and so he only needs one more left. And episode 58 is sacrifices, and it is about the door. The doctor says that Mustang will go there too, but he's not quite ready yet. Go there too, the dwarf father, the good gentleman.
There's implied slashes between each of these terms. So like Greedling doesn't mean that he's a baby Greed. It's Greed/ling. And the dwarf father doesn't mean that he's like, an Odin's son or something like that. It means he's a dwarf / a father / the good gentleman,
Yeah.
So just
Thank you
wanted
for
to clarify that,
understanding.
yeah. Well, it makes me funny because I was like, we should probably call it like Ling Greed or something, because it's not another like tool in English, right? To be like, oh, look at all the little greedlings running
I like
around
the idea
here.
of baby greed, quite honestly.
Oh well, yeah, I mean, it makes me giggle every time. But for
Sounds
our
like a very
audience,
colicky baby.
if they're not aware, yeah.
Well,
I mean,
no, it's a baby that doesn't share with anyone.
Yeah,
That's
I was
a
he's
mine
not,
baby. Mine.
Yeah.
Mine.
he's not gluttony-ling. He's greedling. So yeah. So he's the one with the golden spoon.
Just not with food on it.
Yeah.
There is the time clock is becoming a problem. So the time, of course, being when is the eclipse going to happen, because that's very important to the whole endeavor. And we get the little bits of the city, and people respond like they're being told to stay inside. They want to look updates, but we see Alicia and Gracia. They want to look at the eclipse, and they're ready to. They've got like little glasses or stuff, but they're going to do it at the window, and so you can see that it's the moon is starting to eclipse the sun, and therefore Mustang must become a proper sacrifice, really soon for everything else to work. The doctor just asks Mustang, would you please open the doorway and commit human transmutation? There must be someone that you want to see. Perhaps you can try to resurrect Hughes. Why not? And Mustang refuses.
But he was just so polite. I mean, would you please commit the ultimate taboo and become the final pawn in our grandmaster plan?
Yes.
I mean, with an ask like that, how could you
He
say
said,
no?
please.
Yeah. Would you kindly?
Mustang he's very reasonable.
It's like he wasn't wearing a suit.
He refuses, and so the doctor cuts Hawkeye's throat a bit. She doesn't die, but she, yeah. I mean, so she bleeds out a whole lot, but then she recovers after like 10 minutes. So it's whatever.
Yeah.
Like she says that she will not die because she has been ordered not to. So she tells Mustang, "Don't do it. Don't do it."
There's your answer. That's why she heals.
Yeah.
So she was ordered.
And a doctor saying things of like, if you don't do it, then she's going to die. But I'm a doctor that does transmutation, so I can heal her, something. But Hawkeye had looked upwards, and Mustang understood. And he says, I understand. I'm not going to do this. And then the doctor disappears. Because one of the Chimera had been up above. It was the frog guy and Jerso. And he had just taken him and it's just like, nope, you're going to stay put, not do anything. And so May and the Chimeras and Scar arrive. Or no, Scar was already there. Whatever. They all start fighting again. There's a lot of fighting.
Right.
And then Bradley/Wrath is there, and he is wounded
Yeah.
after everything with Buccaneer and Ling, and Ling had tried to finish him off. He was mortally wounded, but he did drop down into the water. And there was a moment of Ling as a homunculus with all of the. He has a philosopher's stone inside him. He's trying to save Fu, but Fu is already dead. And also, Buccaneer had that moment of asking, "Would you please defend this gate until Olivier is back?" It's like Ling was thanking him for his sacrifice because with all of this stuff and everything that I've accomplished, I still can't save you. And then, of course, Ling gets shot in the head by a scared soldier and survives it. And so it's just very poetic. You can't do anything, you puny human. That's a homunculus and still can't.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't know any healing transmutation or anything like that, right? So he was looking for some kind of alchemical medic, and
Yeah.
it's just like, yep, I've got all the power, but I don't have any of the smarts or the skills for it. So
Yep.
He should have just ordered him not to die. It seemed to work for Hawkeye.
I know. See, he's a young king, so he just doesn't know all the tricks yet. But
back with the others, there's a very injured and no longer recovering Wrath is there. Pride arrives as well, and he kind of takes the doctor, frees him a bit, but keeps him safe. So it becomes Mustang versus Wrath and Pride. Mustang does, of course, kind of lose because they aren't very nice. And Pride makes the transmutation circle of his like shadow body thing and assimilates the doctor to be able to force Mustang to do it. They did not want to do this. It is very costly. It's something they were hoping to avoid by just getting him to do it on his own will. But they force him through the transmutation using the doctor as the thing that is transmuted. And he like becomes this giant blobby mess that is just then ignored. Nobody gives a shit about him ever and again.
Right.
Would you?
They don't really expound on like what the cost was either. Like, I guess you could assume like that's part of what weakens Pride. Like Pride's been in a bunch of fights anyway, right? Yeah. With Alphonse and so on, but maybe it uses up a bunch of souls to do it this way or something. But
maybe it's something of kind of like flying too close to the sun as a homunculus or something of like going too much into that. Just kind of rattled everything and shook it loose, and so now he's unstable. Maybe,
yeah.
I mean, his weakness and obviously him losing his eyesight, but that's his sacrifice that he has to give up. But yeah, pride getting weaker and defeatable seems to be the only real thing that costs, them.
Yeah. So Mustang, he disappears because of the transmutation, but then he appears, plops down where Ed and Izumi and Al, and Al is unconscious. But Mustang starts saying things like, "It's so dark, how can you see anything?" And they realize that his sight has been taken. And the dwarf father person, bad guy, is expanding on how the truth is cruel. It keeps humans from becoming too boastful. And that he examines how the cost is poetic karmic cost to all of them. Like the mother who wanted to get her child has their organs taken away and is no longer ever have children. The boys that wanted the warmth of their mother back can now no longer feel warmth. The person who had a bright vision of the future has now lost his sight.
Yeah, I mean, it's all very poignant in that sort of thing, but I always got the impression that they get to make the decision. Like they sacrifice their part of it, and so it was like, oh, well, what did you give up to be able to get the knowledge or whatever, right? I don't know. Yeah.
It's interesting that it becomes to that point for Ed. He goes through that doorway often enough that he gets to choose what he sacrifices, but it just happens to them, and the cost is something that they would not be willing
like when he gets his arm ripped off the first time and Alphonse gets vaporized, like that wasn't I doubt that was a choice.
Well, part of it with Alphonse though was like he had stayed in too long, right? And so he has more transmutation knowledge, than than Ed theoretically, because I thought the sacrifice was commensurate with what you learned from your door of truth as well, and so
not quite.
yeah.
I mean, it's not too wrong, but Al had been moved into the body of the mother when they tried to resurrect her. And it's just like for their hubris, this is what their cost was. That's why Ed lost his leg and Al lost his body. But I mean, Ed did do something of like, take whatever, just give me my brother back. And that's where he lost his arm, which is why it works later. But I mean, and that one, he kind of had the idea of a cost, but for losing their body and his leg, they didn't.
Well, yeah, I mean, they didn't consciously, right? Because they didn't necessarily, consciously remember going through the door of truth until much later, right? But that's part of why, like, Ed comes out being able to do this transmutation that almost no other alchemist can do, because they had to go through the taboo to get that knowledge to be able to do that same kind of transmutation, realize that their bodies can be a transmutation circle, So, I mean, I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you, but I was like kind of explaining where I, thought this other thing. So
yeah,
but,
it's an interesting thing. How much did they know at which point? And I mean, it brings me back to Mustang of like, he knew every reason why not to do it, even as much as he might want to save somebody. And he made the correct choice. He was forced through it anyway. And then later he's able to do the transmutation without having to do the clapping or snapping. He just did the clap forward, and it's just like, this is the weirdest thing ever. And is he still using it?
How do you feel about the blindness? This is skipping ahead. Being healed instead of using the Philosopher's Stone, when like he even lampshades it. There's one guy I know who won't like this, but I say yes.
Right.
I mean, I don't care
about that.
One, he was forced through it, so I
fair.
feel like he gets an out. And two, I don't recall him having, like, Ed and Al having a really big problem using Philosopher's Stones is based on what they've come to learn and experience through their own seeking of it. But Ling uses it, and for presumably the good of what will be his kingdom now. It's a tool. It's there.
Marco uses it all the damn time, and he made it. And I think Marco's point is these Ishvalans are dead anyway. Let their life mean something, let their death mean something, however you want to say it. Yeah. And maybe Mustang sees it as symbolic, that we're using Ishvalans as, they're healing him, he's going to heal them, as his new duty leading the country and whatever. So
they're providing the vision for the country. There you go. Nice metaphorical.
Also, just the cost of not being able to read and not being able to see documents, and like, he's trying to study crops all the way at the end, and like the differences between this word versus that word, because you can't check notes because you can't read, and presumably hasn't had time to learn Braille. It's just that is such a hindrance that he'd be able to be far more effective in helping people with his sight.
Well, that's what he's got Hawkeye for, to see. But yes, I don't care if he gets him of all people. You don't like the God thing is a capricious and doesn't like entity anyway, so it doesn't really seem to care whether or not you actively chose to do this. It's taking something from you, so fuck it. If I can get it back, I'm getting it back.
Yeah, I mean, we'll probably get there when we get there, but yeah, there are some kind of like loopholey things at the end that I kind of want to address, in a similar vein. So,
all right. And moving forward, May leaves Scar and Wrath to fight each other. It's one poetic moment of they are the nameless ones, so cool, exciting for them.
Nameless Ishvalan to fight the nameless Amestrian, who, also just kind of like wrecked their entire country and everything. So,
and May busts downward into the room of the belly of that line that you liked, apparently, Justin.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because Father's such a great villain, and he's such a great like archmage, because he's just completely unbothered by everything because he knows that he's untouchable. But it's like you've got him in a more natural state where he's got eyes all over him and he's this horrific looking creature and whatever. And like May kicks in the door and yells, "Ding dong, motherfucker, ding dong!" And he's like, "You just put a hole in my roof. How dare you, girl?" or whatever. He's just like completely unbothered by this 11-year-old who's here to kick his ass,
It's
so,
like, actually,
but,
he is a little bit bothered. He is annoyed. She is annoying.
right.
But
Yeah, but she can't lay a scratch on him, but it's like, now I'm gonna have to redecorate. See what you did?
we get to see Al. Al is with his body in the doorway, and he has the opportunity to reunite with his body, but he sees how emaciated and fragile it is, and it would not be able to fight, and so he leaves it and says, "I have to go do this first, but I'll be back." And there's a very weird moment of like his body says that of his soul that he is proud of it, but this is going to be hard on you. It's like body parts talking to each other is a bit strange.
Right. Yeah. It's like it shouldn't have any awareness, but it does seem to have kind of a distinct personality, at least adjacent, and like is even proud of his soul, and I'm like, like you don't have a soul, you are a soul, you have a body, to use Bob's thing, right?
And your body's proud of you.
Not.
Yeah, right. So
what do you have to do for your body to be not proud of you? And
maybe he just left like a little bit of his soul behind to be able to drive the thing,
I will speak from my own personal experience. My body was always very disappointed, and whenever I drank Jägermeister, so that would make my body very disappointed in my soul and life choices.
Fair enough. Okay.
And I don't disagree. That shit's disgusting.
Well, it's good that you don't disagree with yourself. So
no, I never disagree with myself, except when I do.
Moving forward.
Allegedly.
All 5 of the sacrifices are present, plus May. And so they're all going to fight, of course. May decides that she's going to focus on dwarf / father / bad guy. And Hohenheim is still like to have body parts sticking out of him because he's been sort of held together and assimilated. And she leaves pride to the other ones. It's like, that's not as easy as you make it sound, little girl. Stop that. And May is just really good at being annoying. She's not changing anything. She's just distracting him, and it's still decent. The city outside is infested with Ishvalans. There are reports of them just showing up in places, and they go into some lady's house.
That's
and
pretty racist, just saying. So,
but not inaccurate.
But they just like it's this house and the one on this map, and just, yes, they're being very careful of exactly where they're going to follow Scar's brothers' designs. And the light is fading, and so it looks like darkness because the eclipse is progressing because everything happens on a timescale now. Let's see, Wrath versus Scar. They get to have a moment. Or several moments, and Wrath is like he's excited. He's demanding more out of Scar. He's wanting to feel excited during the rest of the fight that he knows he's going to die in, and he's being a bit crazy. And Wrath is about to win, and Scar's about to die. But then he uses alchemy with his left arm, and he creates something, and that takes Wrath by surprise because that wasn't what he was able to do before. And this is again committing a taboo inside the Ishvalan religion of the doing the both, I think alchemy, maybe not alchemy, whatever, the tattoo at the very least. But he did it after like studying what his brother had left. Scar was able to recreate the creation arm of the alchemy alchemy combination, and is now both arm wielding everything. And Wrath again complains about humans of being like annoying and unpredictable.
You're so resourceful and inconsistent, and And he's got a line about how dare you turn your back on your God? Is that what you've done? And all this other stuff. And he's like, yeah, I mostly don't care. I'm going to kick your ass, so.
He complains that like humans are so boring and they do the same thing. But then there's like Mustang who learns from problems and gains wisdom. And how dare you do that?
Yeah, right. That annoys him too. So
yeah. He's just a grumpy old man. Let's see a little bit of Ed versus Pride and in the fight. And it's like, who can outrunt each other? Because no, I'm smaller than you. You don't know how to fight people who are smaller than you.
Yeah. It's because I'm a runt that I know that you're going to fight dirty.
But I know all your moves.
Yeah. Okay. Right. But then the eclipse is full and dwarf father person, the notes are very complicated here. He uses that shadow body like thing in the same way that Pride is body is makes, and he grabs all 5 of the people and just kind of like interrupts, like no more fighting, time for serious shit, and he holds them down. And then he starts espousing of like, have you ever thought of this planet as a life form or at least a system? It's like the amount of information and energy in a human is you can do the same thing with the planet because it is an entirely its own organism. And then greed attacks right at the moment when he thinks that like, okay, so this is the center of the whole circle and now I'm going to steal everything and grab all of that power. But Father had predicted that, and Father Dwarf, whoever predicted that, and just kind of dismissed greed, and it had been a false center. And then he moves over to this little table where he had, it was almost like chess pieces and little toys, and I was like, no, the center is here. And he opens up the gateways, and the like weird eye things happens on their abdomens, and he's put all the sacrifices in the places. And he says, like, yes, fight each other, gateways repel each other. He's like trying to use their, I don't know, weird, complicated things. It's not exactly described because it doesn't need to be. You can see that it's very big. They're out the rest of the country, like there's a lot of red light, and people are like being strangled, and then those black hands that are coming out of the ground, and people just kind of like falling over. You see Winry and Pinako strangle and fall aside. A colossal doorway is like opening over the whole country, and it's towards the sky, towards where the eclipsed moon and sun are.
It's even bigger than the door in Spaceballs. So
good metric. And then the giant dwarf creature is rising and screaming towards the moon sun thing, and he screams for God. A doorway opens on the moon thing, and he says like, I will be bound by you no longer, and I will drag you down with me.
And then he does.
Yeah.
And I mean, for comparison too, right? Like Xerxes was like 500,000 people roughly and whatever, and Amestris they say is like 50 million. So he basically consumes 50 million people's souls and becomes this gigantic Titan thing, and then reaches out towards the moon because that's where the eclipse happens. So
it's a combination of symbols.
Yeah. Yeah, because they talk about that in the next episode, right? You get a little snippet of Ed and Alphonse when they were kids learning about it.
Exactly. Episode 61, He Who Would Swallow God. And that's get flashback thing of like, so the sun is male and the moon is female. And when both of them overlap, and if you have both male and female at the same time, then you have like a whole of a human. And so it's a perfect being.
Right. I know. It's like spirits are weird because that's not what happens.
When a sun and a moon love each other very much.
Yeah.
They make God, apparently. Yeah.
That overlap.
Through oral, who knew?
Accessing of symbols to create the perfect, the perfect being, which is also God, which is also immortal, which is very, very weird. Classic Hermeticism, though.
Yeah, and just to clarify, that's an understanding, right? Because Hohenheim very much reluctantly calls it God, so like he complains like the entire rest of the thing, and everyone's like, oh my God, he ate God, and he's like, he ate a power that he assumes is God. Like let's slow this down here a little bit.
Yeah,
and he's probably very constipated as a result. Let's be very clear about this.
Yeah,
the perfect being does not poop. Come on.
Yeah.
Sorry, I entertained myself there.
That's you're not entirely wrong, because if you could get rid of that as a problem, you're pretty much up there. You're living with the divinity.
All right. it was when Izumi and the sacrifices that are still alive and they recover. Hohenheim does explain. May had, or think had asked if like, is that even possible of swallowing God? It's like it's possible if you have enough energy, and that's when Mustang drops line of like how many people had just been swallowed. The population is roughly 50 million people,
Right.
and now the dwarf father person is in like a younger, fitter, human-looking Xerxes body.
Well,
His name still doesn't get any easier, but he has a physical body again.
Yeah, and he's halfway. I mean, he's basically halfway between Ed and Hohenheim, right? You know, for maturity and that sort of thing. So, you know,
He's
he
an
just
Edling.
looks like he could be Ed's older brother. So,
Yeah. And he was showing off how the powers of he locked down the alchemy with just like a tap of a finger, and he made a small little sun in his hand and stuff.
right.
But
Should I
see,
kill you with the sun?
Yeah.
The power of the sun in the palm of my hand.
Right.
Yeah. But Hohenheim had figured things out a very long time ago and had been wandering around like a mad person and putting little bits of things. And he thought ahead so much that he put little bits of Philosopher's Stone people in the places where the eclipse shadow connected the circle. So it did not need
Right.
to wait for him. If anything had happened to him, it would still fire to undo the Emestrian's Philosopher's Stone swallowing up thing because he's fucking clever.
It's one of the smartest fucking things I've ever seen in a fiction, right? Because like he's sitting there monologuing because it doesn't matter. You could throw that sun at me and you're still beaten. You know, he's like, yeah, I knew what you were doing and I created a counter circle and I've been putting little philosopher's stones everywhere. And because the fucking shadow of the eclipse is the circle, there's nothing you could do to stop it. And it's like, wait, what now?
Which is the coolest thing.
It's
that
so
is the
wild.
Coolest thing. That is so
all
cool.
of the country building that they had been doing to make these circles and to link it up underground like that, it took them hundreds of years, and Hohenheim was able to do it in like 10 years of wandering around, but very annoying. Like it's about 10 years, right? Maybe a little bit longer.
I don't know. I always assumed he had been kind of doing it as long as father had, and like he met his wife along
that's
the
why
way.
he left.
You know? Oh, okay. Yeah.
But he was like trying to figure out how could he die? How could he live a normal life with them? And he did the studying, and then he was like, "Oh my god, that bastard is doing it again." That's why he left because he had to protect the people of Risenbull as much as he could.
Yeah. He's like, wait a minute, the border's here, and shit, that's a fucking circle.
Yeah. And figuring out, of course, it would be the eclipse, and it's like and this also explains why Hohenheim was so risky with his own life. Why did he go fight father early before anyone else had got there? Because it didn't matter. He was just distracting him until later.
Right.
So the dwarf creature bad guy person has to give back all of the Emestrian souls. We get to see them wake up. Those babies start crying. Winry wakes up again and talks about like what was that, and of course a lot more fighting. May puts down like a defensive array because she can still function with alchemy when no one else can. But and then Hohenheim's trying to,
because father shuts down the alchemy again by tapping his finger now instead of like I think he did a foot stamp earlier or whatever. So you know he's like I could beat you with this pinky. Like
they have to survive a little bit. So Hohenheim takes like a brunt of a lot of the attacks. See, we get to see Scar and Wrath again. Wrath was about to kill Scar again and winning the fight in general, but then the eclipse moves just a little bit, and because they were directly below it with where things had fallen apart, that reflects off of his sword and blinds him and distracts him enough that Scar is able to explode him again. And so Wrath loses, Scar wins.
Yeah. But there is a poignant like final words of like, you know, after all this, like Providence basically favored the humans because he feels like he got cheated by God because it's such like a random happenstance that how could it possibly be anything other than like divine intervention of like that moment and that, you know, confluence of events, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Meanwhile, God is in, you know, the dwarf right now, and he's like, "Don't blame me."
Yeah, right.
It says things like he's never believed in God, maybe it's providence or something. And he's had a long, weird life but at least because of humans, it's been an interesting and good one. Like his obsession with humans is a strange one, but then Lanfan is there. And he's speaking to her of like, oh, you're going to get your revenge, go for it. But then they talk for another minute and he dies. You've lost your chance. They're talking like, is there something he'd like to say to his wife? And he says that there are no words needed between us. That is what it means to be the wife of a king. And of course, that's affecting Lanfan and her way that she feels about Ling. It always strikes me that Wrath is very proud of his wife, no matter what, and he does care about her. And they still are very strong as a relationship at this point.
He's got a line, it's not here, and I thought it was, but he's got a line at one point, right, where it's like his wife is the only choice he ever got to make, right?
Yeah.
And that's why he's even more possessive of her than normal, is that, he chose her in his words. Obviously, she chose him back. Don't tell him that. But that's why he's like, I know everything about this because this wasn't by design. She didn't get, put through an academy and attached to his arm or anything. He found her and got married and everything. But yeah.
And they had to be strong partners regardless of being the rulers of a country. That's never easy. And having to be on the spotlight all the time. She always had to be proper and a correct kind of person, somebody able to be his partner, even without the whole like monster homunculus alchemy shit in the background.
She didn't know about that. But,
No, but we do see that she is still a strong character because after she does learn about it all, she's not like she's unflappable, but she takes it in stride.
Right.
Okay. When Wrath is dead, Scar starts doing another circle, and he has this moment of like basically trying to talk to his brother in the beyond of like, is this what you meant me to do? I'm helping the Amestrians, the ones that I hate so much. I still have a lot of hate. And he has both of his arms and he's looking at them, but he does this thing, the thing that was scribed in both alchemy to correct the alchemy of the country, because there's like, alchemy should be working on the tectonic plates and the energy from that, but it's not in Amestris because the homunculi and dwarf and father person had made an interference in it. That's why he could shut down the alchemy, because he interfered with it.
I mean, it seemed to imply like the reason why he had all the hoses and stuff, everything hooked up, is because the bulk of his philosopher's stone was that shield, or whatever. Like that's where he was storing the souls at. It wasn't in his body like you see with a lot of the other homunculi. It was this gigantic reservoir of souls. It was kind of the impression that I got, so. But.
Yeah. They do say like the philosopher's stone is underneath the ground that way with all like, that's why May can feel it moving all the time. It's like there are people moving underneath there.
Right.
So they are able to correct the alchemy of the country, and therefore he's no longer able to shut it down, and they've undone that problem. And it's the same one that we see that Scar's brother had been working on for a long time. You'd seen the one like it was in the notebook and turned over. It's the counter circle. But the dwarf person had been bothered enough that he's going to leave the fighting and he's going upwards to try to get more souls. And you see him go up and he like just points at a couple people, they die, and he has this tiny little philosopher's stone in his hand, and he's trying to get more. We keep saying like he needs a stone, he needs souls, he needs humans, and he's just like trying to capture them as like zombies. The others go to follow, but Ed has to stay behind because pride won't let him go. And the others go up and they run into like the Armstrongs and Hawkeye and everything. And Hawkeye's worried over Mustang, but he says like, "Don't worry about me, but can you still fight?" And she's like, it goes back to like us, of course. Like we're still doing things, and he hates being useless, but he's no longer going to be useless because she's a sniper.
Right. He's got the best pair of eyes in the whole country. So,
and his ears still work, so that's always good.
Yeah.
And this Pride wants Ed's container. That's the way he puts it, because Pride's container is failing and he needs to leave, and he doesn't like humans and he's going to look down on them, but it should work because they're basically brothers in the fact that like Ed and father came from Hohenheim, and so therefore Pride can take his whatever. There was a sense of logic or something, but
Right.
He's about to
more
act like a
shocking.
hermit crab, and he's going to complain about humans.
Right.
Exactly. And Kimberly apparently doesn't like hermit crabs because Kimberly was still coherent inside of Pride and stops him and says, like, I refuse to let this happen or something. Like, if you had kept your honor, I would have done nothing. The moment that you are in danger, you escape from the form that you look from your form into the one that you look down upon and down upon humans. It's quite unbecoming. And you do not understand Edward Elric. And as they're fighting, like Ed apparently
Yeah, because
transmutes himself into a stone to get inside Pride and like crush the baby skull, kind of.
yeah, Pride's like, oh my god, he's gonna kill me, and it's like, if you think that, then you still don't know Ed Elric, and he basically pulls Salim out of the homunculus, So
It's weird. And
Yeah.
there's this like inch-sized baby at the end with a nipple on the forehead.
Right. I know. I keep looking at it and I'm like, what is that? And what's its purpose? Like, this would be one of those things where it's like, maybe you could answer that in a future story that's never going to happen.
Yeah,
But
what's going to happen
also-
when that kid like grows up?
Well, or how about
He's going to get
that?
teased relentlessly.
How's that kid survive? Because I got to tell you, a baby that small,
Yeah.
no.
The nipple is absorbing ambient energy around him.
Right. It's a lightning rod nipple. Okay. That makes...
Instead
That's
of
not
being
weirder
sucked,
than-
it does the sucking. It's ironic in that way.
Okay. But yeah, I just, my favorite part of that culmination is still like, I'll just leave my cloak here with this tiny little bean on it, and I'll
Yeah.
come back for you later. It'd be like, that baby will have frozen to death, starved to death, and asphyxiated by the time that you come back to that. So
Only because it's a
spoilers.
homunculus, does it not? And which is still,
Yeah.
again, weird.
Yeah. If
No,
you've
I've
got,
seen enough anime
know-
where if the baby's born that size, they always survive and become an antagonist.
yeah,
Sometimes they become good afterward, but
sure. And I mean, they're worried about that too. But in this case, like, maybe it's the bean of hope. I don't know. So
Okay.
well, it can't be the one in Chicago because that thing sucks.
that one's full of fully automatic weapons, though, and it's much bigger. So
And it doesn't have a nipple.
true.
Do you know?
I checked
Have you
it.
been to it?
I have. I've put.
You
my
checked
hands
all
on
of
the
it?
thing.
That's a very large bean. You did not check all of it. I know. For
I
a
didn't
fact you
check the top. There may be.
And that's where it
There's
is on
different-
Salim. It's on the top.
Can we move on? This is too
Okay,
ridiculous.
okay. So Ed says he's going to have to apologize to Mrs. Bradley, and he does later. Episode 62, a fierce counterattack. So dwarf father person is making stones out of people, and Hohenheim won't let him. He's interfering as much as he can, and he says things like, "Don't look down on humans. How can you be a god when you don't produce anything? Because God is supposed to like create things." And all he's doing is like taking from humans and, oh, he can make a homunculus, I guess. But then what does a homunculus do? You're not doing anything. You're actually pathetic. And so,
To
God,
be fair, he's only been a god for like 5 minutes. Like, the
mean-
last guy had 7 days.
And he
know,
made a
so I'm
son
yeah. Right.
temporarily.
Right. But the point being, he's going to make some humans. So
yes, he creates people by releasing some of the souls that he had from Xerxes. You recognize the king of Xerxes, and King recognizes Hohenheim and starts wandering at him like, oh my God, I'm still alive. And other people are just like, I have a body again. It's so great.
Right.
It's not creating people, is he? When he's just releasing the ones that were already there. He's just
Right.
still just displacing things. Whatever. We get Greed with Lanfon they run into like the Armstrongs and everyone else that was going to go fight, and he starts saying like, okay, everybody who can't fight has to get off, and he like doesn't know anybody he's talking to, and so he points at like Olivier, who has like an arm broken or something, and says, get off, you don't get to do this. And she's like, but I have to go order around my people, or who else is going to take charge? And she gets assured that all of the Brig soldiers know exactly what they're doing because she's trained them well, and like anyone else who's injured has to stay aside. And Mustang refuses to get off because him and Hawkeye, they're going to continue doing something. We don't get to see what until a minute. But this is when like Olivia and Alex Armstrong, they're like happy with each other because she gives the phone that she's been getting like information from to Alex and demands that he go and win, which is the closest thing he's ever going to get from affection from his sister. There was a very large explosion and all of the fighting that took out like half of headquarters, and it probably did kill a decent amount of people, but the important people that we see do still survive. May wakes up after the explosion, and Alphonse had stayed in front of her and deflected it, but now he's in shambles and can't move. Ed's right arm is damaged, and there's like pieces of it missing. But he and Izumi were protected by Hohenheim, who had just taken the whole brunt of it, like face first. The dwarf is getting targeted by the soldiers, the ones from Briggs, and he's getting shot at. It's mostly just distracting him, but you also hear that the Briggs soldiers are saying very carefully, do not shoot the Full Metal Alchemist who looks just like him.
Right. Shoot the long-haired blonde kid. Oh, not
That's
that
half
one.
naked. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not the short, long-haired blonde kid.
And,
the
and luckily,
medium-sized
their
one.
rules of engagement, that works out for them. At no point does Ed accidentally get shot or shot at. So,
Well, the rules of engagement are don't shoot that particular child, but any other ones, feel free.
there's a whole war about that. So,
And Mustang starts with Hawkeye's help, and she says exactly how many meters far out and everything. And he's like weirded out by having to do the clapping thing, but he is able to do a lot of burning and just kind of end a lot of the problems somewhat. And so you see lots of fighting, and everybody's going all out as much as they can, and but it's not really doing anything to dwarf person. He's just kind of dealing with it all. It doesn't leave a mark. And Greed is watching, and he says, like, with all of that power, once I take it, it'll finally heal the hole in my heart that I've been trying to fill, and I'll be happy. And Ling says, no, you won't. He's like, you're being an idiot. That's not what you want. It's something else. And Greed's like, gets upset and like doesn't respond. Then he starts attacking, and the dwarf just says, oh, I'm going to absorb your Philosopher's Stone. How thankful that you're just bringing it to me. And it looks not very good. But then Greed is like, haha, but I can do the same thing and reverse it. And he starts absorbing things. And because of that whole absorption discussion, the defenses have to be lowered. It's a vulnerability. And so that means that like Ed and Izumi and Alex Armstrong are all able to attack and do much more damage because the defenses have been lowered. And a dwarf father person starts like losing control a little bit more. There's another like small explosion of power being released because he can't contain it as much. I think this is when he had to let go of God. And so he becomes much more desperate.
So he becomes an edgy atheist.
Yes.
This is where I had to let go of God.
That was him in the corner, losing his religion. So
it's not so much in the corner being surrounded by people. But
I got the reference.
It was there.
I got it.
Everyone got the reference except.
Yeah. Thank you.
I got it. It just whatever.
I
Moving
just
forward,
because I want to go on.
Yeah. Because this is a fun moment.
It's a meatwad line. I got it. It ain't funny, but I got it.
Less people are going to get that reference.
Okay. It was okay. It wasn't one of Justin's best, but it wasn't bad. Better than most of these.
He's contributed today. What have you been doing? Nothing.
He's been launching rockets.
That's the thing.
At the moon, he's trying to take down God.
Yes, right. Take this, God.
So, one of the more climactic moments. Bad guy is desperate for a human, a soul, a stone. He's wandering around. Ed is the one that is closest to him, but Ed is pinned to a slab of stone with rebar going through his left arm, and his right arm is completely disintegrated. And there's no one who can get to him in time. And Al becomes very desperate, and then he figures it out, and he asks May for a favor, and he's going to reverse the exchange. And so Al's going to give his soul back, and Ed's going to get his right arm back. And you see May's daggers in places, and she's crying while she's doing this, but it's the circle is surrounded by an owl, and it goes right where Ed's arm is going to be, and you see Ed figure out what's going to happen, and he becomes much more freaked out by that than the fact that the monster is approaching him and about to kill him. But Al goes through the transmutation, and Ed's arm comes back. El is going to stay with his body, and they kind of does a whole reabsorption thing, and then Al and the god thing that has Ed's arm and leg is talking with, like, is this exchange really going to work? What is he going to give back next time? What is he going to pay the price for? And Ed screams that Al was an idiot, and then he continues fighting. I think he just rips out the rebar from his left arm. Yeah,
with his bare friggin' hand.
The one that's been in between ever since. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's been on God. It's been pretty sturdy at this point.
Everybody is cheering for Ed, and like not getting in his way as he's beating up the guy finally, but everybody is on his side. And Ling says to Greed, like, that's what you really want. And Greed acknowledges it. Like, what he wanted was friends like that more than anything else.
Right. Yeah. And we're underselling it here. Ed kicks his fucking ass. Like, you know, some of the best alchemy we've seen the whole time, and then like does his whole like halberd thing and like flings that at his face and like takes half of his face off and everything. Yeah. Wonderful. So it's just great.
Yes, very good. And
underneath he's not bleeding, he's a dwarf, so it's fine. It's just the flesh
and
mask.
Dwarves notoriously don't bleed.
Correct. Yeah. They don't
from
got time for it.
They're made of rocks, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In your country.
All right. I think in most countries.
In episode 63, The Other Side of the Gateway, it starts as a flashback towards the way back in Xerxes, the dwarf in the flask kind of, he had ambitions. Like, didn't you want to better yourself and learn things? And he wants to free himself of his bounds.
All I would want to do is get out of the flask. Right.
I want to do a bit more than that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But he keeps getting confused as to why is he losing. Like, well, how are these humans hurting me? And then he attacks Greed, and he starts like doing the whole sucking back the Philosopher's Stone. And Ling tries to keep Greed, and it's like a tug of war inside of Ling's body. And Greed is saying, "Stop doing that because you'll get pulled in too." And Ling says, "I'm not giving you up because I need you to become emperor." And then Greed lies. Greed had said that he was never going to lie, and he says, like, okay, let's go be Emperor of Jing. It's a step down, but okay. And so Ling gets happy, but then he gets sucker punched by Greed, and he has to let go. And he says that Lanfan had the stone, so take it and go. And Greed calls for Lanfan, and she knows exactly what to do. And she kind of cuts off the arm or something and like makes sure that, so Greed goes back into dwarf father person, and Ling is moved away. And Greed starts transforming now that they're in a shared body again. He starts transforming the body into the weakest carbon or graphite possible because he had that carbonizing ability, and he's just going to sabotage it, the whole thing. And he starts like disintegrating into dust, and Greed gets cut off and is floating away, and he dies satisfied, thinking at least he had some really good friends, at least with Ling and Ed, who look devastated that he's dying. So there is more hitting of the dwarf, of the bad guy. And like, it's punctuated. Like, everything else is happening. And then like in a lull moment, there's going to be just like, you're going to hit him some more. And he loses all of the rest of his souls. And the like black hands of the transmutation, the doorway of truth, it starts coming out of his body and like pulling him into himself. And so he like crumbles into it. Non-existence, and he's scared, and he's like begging for answers, like, why? I just wanted to know everything in the world. I wanted to be free and unbound. And Hohenheim actually feels bad for him, of like, that's what he had said a long time ago. And when back in the shape of being the dwarf in the flask in the doorway of truth, talking to the god version of himself, the God says all he did was cling to the idea of God, and you haven't grown at all. You have not actually improved anything. It's like, I will give you truth so you do not become boastful, which is exactly what he had said about humans. And so it's the poetic justice coming back at you. And eventually he despairs, and he begs not to go back to whatever it is beyond the doorway. What should he have done? All he wanted was to know everything. And the god creature eventually says, like, you must have seen the answer.
It's 42.
Somewhere in there, yes.
But
I'm
what's
sure
the
the number
question?
42 is there. Yeah. And then after the bad guy's gone, everybody's now concerned about Al and is gathering around him. And Ling offers the Philosopher's Stone that Landhon had, but Ed refuses it because they were sticking by that decision. Hohenheim offers himself as a Philosopher's Stone. There's exactly one person's worth left. And Ed's like, no, we're still not doing that. You're still Philosopher's Stones.
Yeah.
And there's like,
If you say something that's stupid again, I'll knock you out. So
yeah. Well, it's like, because Onam tries again. It's like, it's not just the Philosopher's Stone. It's like, let me make up for being such a bad father. I was gone, and so I bear some of the responsibility of this. And it says, like, what a rotten dad you are. I'm not, like, don't make me hit you.
right.
I'm not afraid to hit an old
he
man.
called me dad.
Yes, that's Hohenheim's whole take. Yeah.
That's what you got from that, Hohenheim? That?
It could be worse.
Like, once Ed figures out what he has to do, he relaxes and he starts drawing a circle. And in the middle of the human transmutation circle that we've become familiar with, and everyone else is just like, why is he doing this again? And he says, be right back. This is the Fullmetal Alchemist's final transmutation. And he goes and talks to God at the doorway. And he's going to give up his doorway of truth and therefore his ability to do alchemy at all to get Al's body back. And he's being taunted a little bit. It's like, oh, you're going to lower yourself down to just being a normal human who can't do any alchemy. I'm not lowering myself. I am just a normal human and always have been. Just a normal person who couldn't save a little girl from being a chimera. And when he had first seen the gateway, he thought, I can know everything. I can solve everything with alchemy, but you can't. No matter how much you know, you still can't solve everything. And he still has all of his friends. And that's what God says is the answer, is he still has all of his friends. And so they get rid of his doorway of truth. And the God creature says that the back door is that way. And when that disappears, he sees Al and they go through that doorway. I guess it all works.
Well, Al gets to keep his alchemy, right? So it's probably his doorway, quote unquote.
Yeah, they
Right.
get to come back out through it. It's hilarious how, I don't know, she did it very carefully to make sure everything worked out. It's just kind of remarkable that it all actually does make sense.
Well, I mean, it's classic, right? Whenever God closes one door, another one opens. So, you know.
Oh, boy.
Come on, guys. This shit
Like
writes
being an
itself.
edgy atheist. What happened 5 minutes ago?
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm just as edgy as the moment needs at any point in time. So, yeah.
So edgy a corner hound can get through it.
True.
So,
You can check him
Al's
for
back.
Wouldn't you?
Sure with those bastards.
There's nothing. What am I gonna? I'm gonna look. There's 8 billion corners right here. They're gonna get me or they're not gonna get me. What's the difference?
Yep. I know. My square bookshelves, like, fuck. So,
High-level military officers are arrested. There's some basic cleanup. Like Mustang comes out as the hero and is known as that the Fuhrer, Bradley, and Selim have tragically lost their lives. In the disastrous aftermath, Alex Armstrong walks up to Hohenheim and thanks him, and then explains that he's thanking him for his sons because Ed and Al had saved the country. And this is very moving to Hohenheim. He doesn't really explain, but then Hohenheim goes to Trisha's grave and talks to her. He's so happy that Ed called me father, but he did say rotten right in front of it. And he's happy to be alive. He's had a good life. He's been enough. And sure enough, I don't want to die. There's no helping me. But then he does die. And Pinocchio comes, finds him, and then berates him for dying with such a happy smile on his face. The imbecile.
Sounds
Of
about right.
course,
I guess
Alex
it's a little.
like chocolately smiles to herself over the guy getting berated for dying with a smile, being happy a little bit. They're like, that's
Yeah.
that's
That's the correct response.
Yeah.
yeah. Let's laugh at him.
I
No,
think it's a
but
little gentler in the dubbed version. So, but yeah.
it's a good moment, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I was just kidding because you know what it's not meant that way, right? It's she says it.
She basically calls him a dope. I don't remember if that's the word that she used, but like, imbecile's a little harder. So,
Yeah,
or
she
whatever. So
does, I don't know, the delivery of it is clearly like this is her way of showing affection.
Yes,
Of
that's
like,
what I was trying to say. It's a fiction.
Baka. Is it
Baka's
baka in
idiot.
Japanese?
Oh, well, this has been an episode of Live
We
with
have.
March.
we have one episode left.
I know we
Two
got to do
pages
the
here.
the epilogue, man.
Yeah.
Yes,
So-
the epilogue episode, the 64th episode.
EG told me that there was time, so I just reacted. Sorry. Let's
Yeah.
go. Continue.
We've talked about some of this already, so hopefully this will be quick. Of like, Mustang is in the hospital, and Dr. Knox's friend, wants to see him, and he goes through, and he has somebody with him. But he walks into Mustang is learning about the crops, and like it's the double cropping. No, it's dual cropping, and he's trying to study. And it was Ross that was explaining, like, before becoming Fuhrer, he wants to fix the Ishvalan problem. Okay, so he's trying to restore.
So did the
Yeah,
previous
right.
Fuhrer. Once and
He's
for
going
all,
to
right?
restore
Ooh.
Ishval and help the people, and they did help significantly in saving the day and saving the whole country, and so they must be honored, and they want to feel better about the whole genocide that they committed, and so it's not going to undo their sins, but they're going to do what they can to make better. And so Mustang is learning everything as much as he can without being able to see notes. But Marco was with Knox, and I guess they won't need to act too harshly. I guess this is what Knox said or something. But like, they have the Philosopher's Stone. Would he be healed by it? And Mustang does take him up on it and says, yes, Full Metal is going to be angry, but first, can they help someone else? And Mustang will go after him. And then you just know that Jane Havoc had gotten a call. It's like, what do you mean you want me to go to Central? And you'll tell me afterwards? This doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I forgot about that too. Like, I mean, I just watched it last night, but that's another reason why he was okay with using the stone, is like, make sure his people are taken care of first, and then, so
making more of them is wrong, but using what has been made to fix things, it must cannot be frivolous, but doing it just to actually do something significant, it would be a good thing. So we see Scar in a bed, in a gigantic bed, and he's in the Armstrong Manor, because they don't know that Mustang doesn't know that Scar is alive, and he's been spirited away. But Mustang wants to work with Miles, and therefore also Scar. Like, would they help rebuild Ishvalan country and people? And Scar says he's going to help. And Olivia is like, Mustang's going to be unhappy when he hears that Scar's alive. But also, what is your actual name? And she decides to ask, but he says, says that he has died twice now, so he's not a person of this world. Call him whatever. And so she just calls him Ishvalan and walks out. And so we never get to know his name or his brother's name, ever. Ed and Al are returning to Reason Bowl, and they have to take breaks because Al can't walk that far very much because everything is atrophied and he needs to recover. But they were talking about Ling and May. Ling is going to become the emperor. He has Philosopher's Stone. And so May went all the way to this other country, and she doesn't even get to go home with the thing. And she's all ready to be very angry at him. And then he says, well, don't worry, I promise to take care of everyone. I accept everyone and want them all. And she starts crying and accuses him of being too greedy, because I guess he rubbed off. But Ed and Al, they chat about May. It's like, you really like May, don't you, huh, Al? And it's like, oh, are you certain about Winry? It's like, they're actually just talking about girls. It's strange. And the dog, Den, that also has a automail, had remembered Al and starts licking Al's face. And Winry hears that as she's coming out to meet them. it's a big moment of all the everything.
Yeah, like you have a moment where it's like she can hear both of their voices, but Al's isn't modulated, for the first time. So she's like, wait a minute, there's something familiar about this.
Yeah.
And she's just kind of like stunned and goes outside and
Yeah.
tackles them.
For her to hear Al saying that tickles, like that means he can feel things. And that's what struck, at least to me.
Gotcha.
And then we shift to 2 years later, and Ed is trying to fix a shingle without alchemy, and he hammers on his own thumb, and he tries to do alchemy again. He's like, nope, because this mill's not going to work.
Yeah, was worth a try. So
yeah, but there's a moment of Ed and Al talking about like
alchemy. Pepperidge Farm remembers.
Ed and Al are talking about like there's something they've been thinking, and but then it cuts away. We see Grumman and Mrs. Bradley talking about they're still trying to put together the country. He's not leaving it to the younger people. He can't just abandon them. He's going to do his part with something. And then, we see Selim as a young child. So it's been 2 years. He does seem a bit older than 2 to my eyes, like maybe more like 3 or 4. So maybe he's aging a bit accelerated. And he still has the giant nipple on his forehead. And Grumman says, like, we're still going to keep watch of him, even though he seems like he's just been a normal kid, sort of. But if anything unusual were to happen, something is going to happen to the kid because obviously he can't be trusted. But Mrs. Bradley is very understanding, not flapped by it at all, and says that she will make sure that nothing unusual does happen. Al visits Alicia and Gracia and is, I guess, just giving them an update of whatever they're doing. And he says that they've stumbled upon a new idea of alchemy. Like instead of give one and take one, it's like you give one and you give one and you get 11 or something. I didn't get what
get 10. You get yourself back, and that makes 11. So
I think they just actually gave 11 and their math sucks.
Gotcha.
But whatever. It's
how he explained it in the dub. So yeah.
No, that's pretty much how they explained it at every point. It's just like I think you're misconceptualizing your math there, but whatever. Al is gonna go to Jing to learn alchemy, and Jerso and Zampano are going with them. Ed is going to go study more things, I guess, presumably in the West, and then they're going to meet back up and learn more things, and everything's happy. But Ed is at the train station, and Winry is seeing him off and berating him the whole time of, like, you have to maintain, like, do the maintenance on the leg, and, like, remember to oil it, and call me if there's need an appointment. And he gets stuck on like an appointment, and he's been answering in monosyllables anyway, and like not really listening. And he feels all nervous when the train arrives. And then he demands like equivalent exchange. I'll give you half of my life if you give me half of yours. She's like, that's stupid. I'll give you all of it.
And then realizes what she said.
And then she gets super embarrassed because it's anime.
Yeah.
And it's so cute. Isn't it so
okay,
cute?
Hey, Maze, I need you to calm down there. So
it is cute.
Oh, that is cute. Oh my goodness. It's so cute.
Yeah. And there isn't an ending montage after all of that. You get to see Ling in a picture as Emperor. There's Scar and Miles looking different in the Ishvalans. Let's see, the dog Black Hayate got to have puppies. They were adorable. Mustang gets a tiny little pencil mustache. Ed and Winry, they have kids that look like.
If you're going to be a leader.
Yes. Okay.
I did. Oh wait. Okay. No, I didn't mean like that. It's just, never mind. I didn't think of that.
It does seem that May came back with Al, and you see them a little bit more grown up. Generally happy ending. We finally did it. It's done. With the other things that you
get there, but such a great show.
It's pretty good. Yeah. That whole the eclipse thing, definitely one of the smartest moves. That's some 4D chess right there. And lots of good stuff for the finales, right? The soldiers, even though they're not really doing much, ultimately, but having 200 soldiers roll out with freaking mortars and machine guns and just start blasting away at the bad guy is a pretty fun scene. So
sends a statement, if nothing else.
Sure, yeah.
Should I roll us out, or do we have any closing thoughts on the anime?
Any more loopholes to discuss?
Oh yeah, the loophole thing. Yeah, I think I didn't bring it up again because I might have solved it when with your description it made more sense. But I was like, Ed loses his leg to get the knowledge, right? And he's still missing his leg at the end. You know, him giving his Dora truth back, he doesn't get his leg back.
No.
But it's because Ed gives his door up to get Al back, and Al had given his knowledge back or whatever to get his arm back, and so he's just stuck with no leg, you know, or whatever.
Right. So the many costs here. Al loses his body. Ed loses his leg for trying to resurrect their mother.
Mm-hmm.
Ed gives his arm up to get Al's soul.
Right.
Al gives his soul back to get Ed's arm back. To get a body and a soul back, you need more than just a body or soul. They could do it by using somebody else's body and soul, but they're not going to. So what is of equivalent value of a whole body and a whole soul? Well, it's a whole truth.
Sure.
So it had to be more than what Ed even had to be able to give, because otherwise it would. I think that God did offer it. Like, are you going to give your entire self to give his entire self?
Right. And just to clarify, there's bargaining there, which again implies that these guys have a choice of what they're giving up. So very likely Mustang gave up his eyes. You know, I think the disconnect, and like I said, like what makes sense to me anyways, is when they're in the door of truth, they don't always get to retain, you know, consciously the kind of information. And you see that with Al even earlier as well in the show, because Al doesn't remember passing through the doorway, right? And it's only after he gets that unlocked, I think around the time that they're dealing with greed and finally start finding out about the homunculi, that he unlocks the rest of his alchemy, you know, and he starts to catch up to his brother's skill set. And so that's like, it's all of these little things that line up to me basically to imply, and especially there at the end, like truth, you know, whatever this being is, the god, whatever, like they're bargaining. Like there is some choice here, you know. Ed gets to make that sacrifice or not, and he sacrifices his door instead of his body and his soul, or another body and soul, you know. So that's kind of where I'm like, you know.
Yeah. And like Ed has gone through that doorway several times after like not only the first couple times, but like when he had first gone through the gluttony gateway, and then he'd seen that Al's body was there, and you know that therefore is for certain going to be able to get him back. Like he's figured this out, and so he's one of the only people who's ever going to do this with fully informed knowledge of what's going to happen and what kind of cost he needs to give. For I think especially when someone was doing it for the first time and just trying to resurrect somebody, like it is implied that Izumi had no idea what she was going to lose when she tried to resurrect her son. So,
well, not going in, but you know, she still made a sacrifice, and it doesn't take a lot of mental gymnastics to think that she went in and she got the knowledge, you know, for whatever, and that basically was like, I don't need to have any more kids if I can bring mine back. And that being the bargain that she made. And maybe. You know, and in a similar way, like Ed's like, yeah, absolutely, you can freaking take my leg if I can bring back, you know, my mom or whatever, or, you know, because he gave up his arm for his brother, you know, for at least his soul, you know. So I don't know, that's kind of the thing. And like, and part of the implication with Al's journey and him not remembering and having that data, like all that information locked up, was that it's just highly traumatic, right? And so like humans can just not always retain the information there. Like when Ed goes through in subsequent times, he's not necessarily getting an info dump. He's just kind of passing through, you know, in a way.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it does seem that sometimes the cost can be bargained, and especially it seems that God has decided that Ed is interesting but he wanted to see
Sure.
what Ed was going to give, versus sometimes it is just a cost that is inflicted upon them. And especially with Mustang, and that he didn't even choose to go through it, it is still just taken away from him.
Yeah, I mean, maybe.
Is it a plot
'cause-
hole? I don't know. I don't think so, but
Yeah. Sure. I don't think we're going to convince each other, basically, but you know, some alternate theories and that sort of thing, and they're not necessarily like, I mean, the story's the same, right? I was going to say they're not necessarily mutually exclusive, but I mean, they kind of are ultimately. It's just there's not enough evidence one way or another, maybe, you know, but
yeah.
So just some other pieces to consider and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, if you want more thoughts on life, the universe, and everything, that's what I went with. You can catch more episodes of While We Weren't Recording and the Dresden Files podcast every Saturday at 1 p.m. and you can 1 p.m. Eastern, and you can support us on patreon.com/brokenjars. Get access to our Discord if you do, and give us a like, a comment, subscribe on YouTube. That helps a lot.